we go.
Oh, okay. And then everything changed. So
Yes,
like
so now
this
it's
last
recording.
one.
We're still
Okay.
figuring out this technology.
Okay.
All right, so you're our daughter.
Yeah.
Will you please share with us a little bit about your background and then what led you to the point of wanting to ask dad for help?
I mean, well, my background, I grew up with this. So there's that, which I think changes things a little bit in the sense of like there was some exposure and there's some normalcy around this idea of like ascended masters and re-embodiment and things like that that people I think aren't typically as comfortable with. But once I went into probably my teen years, I was like, this is weird. I'm not in it. I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense. All of the messaging around me didn't couldn't explain how this could possibly be real. So for a while, I sort of went away from, and you kind of do things out of routine. Like we decreed together, and we did things as like a process in the same way that you get up, you eat breakfast, you go to school, like you're not really thinking about it. And then when I started to think about it, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so I was doing my own thing, which was nothing really. Tried going to church a few times, didn't like that very much. Um, Got married to a man whose family background is Jewish. So I've been engaging with like the Jewish holidays and a little bit of Judaism, but they're not even like super practicing Jewish. So we just do like holidays and stuff together. And then at some point, I couldn't even tell you like where, because it didn't happen all at once. And I feel like it's still happening. There wasn't like a
It's in
moment where I
process.
decided, yeah, like this is for me. I think I don't know. I don't know at what point. I think my dad and I like had a conversation, and I think it was just this point where I was open to advice or ideas, and I was like, I might as well just use anything that's in front of me. Um, and I felt like it was working and it was helping, and so I just kept coming back to it. Generally, I'm open to advice or I guess like signs or ideas from wherever because I feel like science and science is important, but even then like people do science and like everything has some amount of bias to it. There's so many things even scientifically that we can't prove or that don't make sense or don't have explanations, and there are a lot of things that I take for granted. Like I was thinking the other day, I brush my teeth every morning and I don't know why. Like I don't know how toothpaste works. I don't know that I know what plaque is. Like I don't know why I do this stuff, but somebody told me it was important, and I knew that when I wasn't brushing and flossing really well, I had to get a root canal, and so I was like, just do it. And so when I don't decree, I don't feel good. So I do it. And that's kind of it for me. I don't really think too hard about it.
Hmm. Okay, so you started decreeing.
Hmm.
Why?
And
What
that's the
what kind of
thing.
things did you see and
I,
experience?
well, generally, so this is so hard, I'm realizing, because dad has been telling me to do this my whole life. And sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. And
I know
so,
you guys all went through your rebellious stage. I'm not
yeah.
going to do anything dad says.
So I'm like, where did I start actually listening? Because there were periods of time where I would decree for maybe a few months and things would go well. And I guess I mean, when I say go well, I feel like I didn't have to ask a lot of questions about myself or my life or what to do. I felt like I always sort of knew in terms of my academics or my career or my relationships. Like I kind of just knew what to do, and that was easy and that was nice. And then usually once things got comfortable, I stopped decreeing because I was like, I don't need this anymore, or my life is great. And then something would happen. Like I would have a falling out with a friend, or I've moved a lot. So I'd moved to a new state and suddenly everything is different and there's this big adjustment period, or my husband and I would have a fight, or I don't know, our finances, there were issues with our finances, especially happened when we moved to Kentucky. We had no money. We had like change in our account. And so I was like, how do I live with no money? And so there was usually something that would bring up some sort of issue, and then I would go back and be like, what do I do? Um, and usually there was this sense of guilt going back to dad, asking him for help because he would always say, well, I tell you what to do, and then you don't do it. Like, this takes a lot of time, this takes a lot of energy for me. Why don't you just keep doing it? And so I think at a certain point, I just started to feel guilty enough about wasting his time that I just stuck with it. Um, but now I feel like at least I'm at a point where I can really feel the difference between, it's almost like the difference between when you get a full night's sleep and the difference where you get like 3 hours of sleep. Um, I can feel when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And so I can tell it's helps.
Okay, so you've started doing this more regularly then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are some of the things recently that you have experienced that you could share and enlighten us upon? Because I'm not privy to all your
Yeah.
conversations with dad.
You're not?
No,
Send
when
everything
you
to
and
you.
dad talk,
So,
and when you and dad talk, it's like
yeah.
he thinks I'm listening into every conversation, but I'm not there. And then he's like, "Remember, she told us this." And I'm like, "No,
What?
wasn't there for that conversation."
Okay, interesting. A big one for me has been with school. Um, and well, even before that, with work. So I do work with young people you in some kind of a system. So I graduated college with a degree in child development, clinical and abnormal psychology, and something else. I don't even, but psychology and child development, essentially. Oh,
Okay.
social service. It was like a social work degree. Um, and then so I worked with girls in the foster care system for a while, and then I did work with kids in the like, but at the very, very early stages, like the first time they've ever been arrested. And then I worked with kids that were being charged as adults, essentially, so like very, very serious kinds of stuff. And then I started working with kids in the school system, doing restorative justice work. Because my master's degree, I did my thesis in restorative justice. Um, so I've always worked with kids that were like systems involved in some way. And when I moved to Kentucky, I moved there for a job on sort of, and I always say that it's like my dad's advice, but I was guided. I had called him after I finished my master's. There weren't really a lot of jobs in Chicago doing what I wanted to do. So I called dad and was like, what do I do? And he received guidance to apply to this job in Kentucky, which I did not think I was going to get because it's pretty, the system there is pretty like people in Kentucky don't really leave. They stay there forever. And so it's a lot of like the same people through and through. Like I worked with people who worked with their moms, whose kids were thinking about joining the program. Like it's all very insular. It's very like private. And so I didn't expect that they were going to take someone from outside of Kentucky. Um, but I got the job. We moved to Kentucky like 2 weeks after the wedding. It was very stressful. And then started to work. And from there, maybe a year in, I got this sense of like, I feel like I'm not doing everything that I'm supposed to. I feel like I need to do more. And then was guided to apply to a different position, which again, there were only 12 of those positions in the state. And so I was like, I'm still kind of new. The fact that there's even an opening is a big deal because those people, they get in their jobs and they stay there forever. So there's never any openings. And I'm still young. I'm not from the state. But then I got the job. So that was cool. And then in doing that work was met with just a lot of adversity with not my boss, but my boss's boss. So like two people above me, she and I were not getting along. She was always targeting me for issues, those sorts of things. And so I just kept wanting to go. I'm like, I cannot stay in this job anymore, to the point that even my coworkers were doing things to try to shield me from her. They're like, I don't know why she's like that to you. She's so mean to you. If you need something, just ask me. I'll get it for you because we know she's going to yell at you. Like it was so bad. Everybody knew. And I was like, I can't stay
I
in this.
didn't.
What? You did? Yes, you
I
did.
didn't know.
You didn't know?
No, I'm not really. I just knew that you were having troubles, but you always talk to dad, so I was like,
Oh, I guess
okay.
I knew. Yeah. I mean, we talked about a lawsuit for a minute. Like it was bad. Dad was like, we might need to like he gave me the number for a lawyer and was like, you might need to do something about this. It was really bad. Um, but he was like, but don't quit. Like you might have to sue her, but don't you it's not time yet. And that was hard. That was so hard to do. Um, and I was like, why should I stay here? Why should I let someone continue to treat me like this? I don't understand. Um, and everybody around me was like, leave this job, but I stayed. And then through the job that I was at, I learned about a brand new program coming to the state. They were hiring for a manager, and I was like, I can do that. So I applied to that job. And then when they saw my background, they saw where I was working, they knew the relationships that I had based on the job that I was currently in. They bumped me up and they hired me as a director, um, which is not what I asked for, but they just gave me this better job. Um, and in that moment, I was like, oh, okay, none of this was an accident. And so much of my new job was working with people in my old job. It was the same people, it was the same systems. I was in meetings with everybody. So I felt like had I left in the way that I had wanted to leave, it would have burned a lot of bridges and would have made it impossible to do. Even if I had gotten that job, it would have been really, really difficult to do. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, and that was I think the moment where I was like, "Oh, this is maybe I should listen." Like I wasn't convinced, but it just seemed too strange and clear. So I was like, "Okay, this is it." So I stayed in that for a while, moved to a new job in Boston, and then had a similar so this is the thing. The job that I did end up getting I left that without any guidance. I was feeling really stressed out there. I wasn't enjoying the work. I was on call 24/7. So I was getting calls in the middle of the night. I was driving out all times of day. It was just me. Like when they hired me as director, they just eliminated the manager job. So I was
Wow.
doing it all by myself. I ran the entire office. I managed all of the staff. I did all of the trainings. I managed all of the budget. I wrote all of the reports. I did everything. And I was tired. And despite talking about how tired I was, my boss, who was based in Chicago, was giving me no support. So I was just like, and I got really upset. I was getting really tired. I was starting to feel depressed and anxious every time I could feel use my phone the way I had a work phone and it was
Hmm.
on vibrate and it was on ring and it would usually start to vibrate before it would ring and every time I heard the vibration or could feel the vibration I would have like a panic attack like oh my god I have to go another kid got shot like I can't do this all day long um so I started to look for other jobs but did not talk to dad about it explicitly because I was scared he was going to tell me I had to stay and I did day. And I was like, it's better if I just do it. And I like didn't know then to like be told that I need to stay and then quit because I did not think I could last in that job. So I got a new job and moved to Boston for that job and
Hmm.
immediately had issues with my new boss. And I was like, why is this happening? And for a while didn't really say anything and then eventually came around to talking to dad about it and he was like you left another job too soon and the relationship I had with my old boss was fine so I didn't understand I'm like but he and I were great we got along together I was annoyed with him because he wouldn't help me but I don't
Hmm.
understand we didn't have problems not like my other one where she was like crazy but apparently, when I left, even though I found a guy that I thought would be a great director, I trained him myself. He knew how to do everything right. When I left, everything sort of fell apart. And the relationship between the new guy and my boss was not very good. And I guess there were some feelings between my boss, the way that he felt about me for leaving, that came with
Hmm.
is what was explained to me. He was like, you left him in a really bad position. Um, and so that relationship was negatively impacted in a way that you're experiencing here now.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that followed me, which was rough. Dealt with that for as long as I could, and then I quit again. Um, but I was starting to see a pattern of like, when you don't do the things you need to do, they follow you. So, like, you just got to do what you need to do. Somewhere um, in my most recent job, I was working at a law school, in a law school. For the longest time, my dad had told me that Mother Mary had given me guidance that I was going to go to law school, and I didn't want to go to law school. I had finished school. It was very expensive. It was stressful. I liked working. Like, I liked just having a job, and I liked showing up somewhere and then leaving and then having a life. And so I was not interested in going to school ever. But once I started working in the law school, I kind of felt like, oh, maybe this is a thing. And I started to really think seriously about it. And I had a conversation with my dad, and it was just like we were talking about something totally different. And then out of nowhere, he goes, oh, it's time. And I just knew what he meant. I was like, oh, he was like, Mother Mary,
Wow.
she says it's time. And I was like, because I had been thinking I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to go, but I had been thinking about law school because I was there every day. I saw the students every day. I heard some of the conversations that were happening. And I was like, I could maybe do this. This could happen. And because I worked at the school, I could go there for a huge discount if I got into their program. So um, I started to study for the LSAT. I started to apply for schools. Um, I was nervous the whole way through. And even then, I didn't fully think that it was the right move. I was like, I'm going to do this because he told me to. And I committed to starting to doing things that I was told because I saw how they benefited me. But I still didn't want to. And I still wasn't sure that it made sense. Um,
Hmm.
so I took the LSAT. I started to apply. I got my results back, and I remember being like, I did not. My undergrad grades were very bad. I spent most of my undergrad chasing my husband and not doing homework, which like I got him in the end, so it worked out. But my grades were terrible, so I knew, or I thought, if I was going to get into a good school, I had to get a really good score. And so I spent every waking moment studying. I felt really good. I took the exam. I got an average score, like maybe 2 points above average. And I was like, this isn't enough. What am I going to do? And dad had told me that if I was going to go to law school, I had to get a full scholarship. And I thought, nobody is going to pay me to go to school with these grades and this score. It's just not going to happen.
Now,
Um,
dad told you that was the guidance that
that
you
was,
had that you,
yeah,
okay.
that it would all be paid for. And so I thought, how is this supposed to work? I don't get it. And so I called dad crying, and he said, you got the score you needed to get. And I said, no, I didn't, because there's no way. And he said, just keep going, just keep doing what you need to do. And I don't actually know if that conversation was a dad conversation or a guidance conversation, like if he was just assuring me or if that was guidance. But he was like, just keep going with the guidance, like just keep doing what you need to do. So I applied to a bunch of schools, including one that I thought for sure was the school that I was supposed to go to. I had a bunch of friends there. One of my colleagues was a professor there. She wrote me a recommendation. Um, I was there on their campus all the time. It's like walking distance from my apartment. And so I was like, this is the school. They have a program, a public interest program that gives a full scholarship. They were number 2 in the nation for public interest. And I thought that that was what I wanted to do. So I was like, this is it. This is the school. So I was very focused on that one school. In the meantime, I got into some other schools. No full scholarships yet. So I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't know. I got into a school that gave me a full ride that was ranked a lot lower than the school that I wanted to go to. And it actually, I threw away my letter. I was like, I'm not even going to this school. um, and then one day was like, well, you should at least go check it out. So one day after work, I walked over, I went to visit, and the minute I stepped on campus, which is just it's a very small campus, but I got on campus and I was like, this is it. I knew that this was it. And there are these moments when you're guided to do something, or at least in my experience, where I feel like I've been guided to do something where I can feel, I just know, or those senses, those videos you guys talked about twin flames and um, what is it? The other one, spirit,
Soulmates.
soulmates. Sometimes I meet someone and I'm like, oh, I've known you forever. You just have this feeling of knowing. And so I got there and
Mm-hmm.
this is it. This is it. And I called dad and I was like, I'm confused because it's not the school I thought it would be. It's ranked lower, which means how am I supposed to get the opportunities that I'm supposed to get? Um, but they did give me a full scholarship. And dad went back and did whatever he does, got the guidance and said, it would be okay for you to go there, but these are the things you need to do to make up for the, because I'm looking at number 2 in the nation against number like 100 and something else. So they were like, this is how you make up that gap. It's going to be okay. But like, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. So I waited. The deadline for um, the second school was coming where I needed to put down a deposit and tell them what I was doing. So I called, I delayed the deadline. I delayed the deadline again. And then I heard back from the school I thought was the school. And they gave me like an 80% scholarship. Like they gave me most of the money. And I was like, no, but this is the school I'm supposed to go to. So I need to negotiate my scholarship. So I went to the school. I tried to negotiate. They refused to negotiate. Meanwhile, I'm getting calls from them being like, but here we have this amazing program. We have this amazing research opportunity. We want you to do the research for us. We want you to do this. You would love it here. And so I was like, I think I need to go there. And I called dad and he was like, is that are you getting a full scholarship? And I was like, I'm getting mostly a scholarship. It's a really good school. Like, but, and he said, well, you make the decision, but that's not the guidance you got. So ultimately, I chose the other school. And even up until maybe my first month into school, I was like, I don't know. Did I make the right choice? But for one, a few things happened. One, I realized I absolutely needed to go to law school. I have, despite how hard it is, and despite, I'm actually like pretty miserable a lot of the time. Um, in the sense, it's really hard. It's really hard. And I don't know how, like, there's got to be a better way of saying it that actually conveys what I'm experiencing. But like, it's not fun. Law school isn't fun, but I'm having a lot of fun. I love what I'm learning. I love my classes. I love my professors. I have never felt so motivated before in my life. I have never felt like I was doing something that was so much my purpose. So even though the work is terrible,
It's challenging.
it's challenging. Thank you.
You're
Very
welcome.
challenging. And I cry a lot. I cry maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Um, I cry a lot. I cry on the bus. I cry after class. I cry before class. I cry while I'm doing homework. I cry a lot. It's fun. You just getting it out. Um, it feels like you're exactly where you need to be. You have all the tools you need. You are going to be excellent at this. And I'm actually pretty good at law school. So that's one thing where my whole life I was fighting this guidance that I needed to be a lawyer. And now that I'm in it, I'm like, oh, why did you wait so long? Like, you should have done this forever ago.
Eons ago.
Yes. So there's that. And then two, I keep getting signs that the school that I'm at is exactly the school that I need to be in. Um, and the first thing, the fact that I'm in school and enjoying it was enough. I was like, this is it. This is great. I feel great about that. And the next thing I knew, I start to find opportunities at school that tell me like, oh, you would not have had this opportunity at any other school. For example, first or every summer of law school, you're supposed to do an internship. Not everybody does one, but that's sort of the the layout is that you do these internships, and I ended up with a really prestigious internship. Um, One of my professors told me that I will be the first in the history of the school, he thinks, to be at such a high court. I'm working right under the Supreme Court, which is like huge.
Wow.
And if you get to do that, people do that usually their second summer or the summer after they graduate. I'm doing it my first summer, which is just unheard of. And so I'm really excited about that. But my advisor at school, she found the opportunity through a program that only she knew about. Because as I tell, they're like, how did you get that internship? How did you, like, tell me how you did that? I don't understand. Like, did you know somebody? Like, did you pay somebody? People have asked me that.
Wow.
How did you get in there? And I was like, Nicole, my advice, she just gave it to me and was like, apply for this. And so I did. Like, I actually didn't realize how prestigious it was because of how easily, hi, Dad.
He can't hear you.
Because of how easily I got in the door. Um, but only she knew about it. I've talked to people at other law schools. I've talked to other admissions people, like, and I tell them about the program and they say, I've never heard of that program. I didn't know about that program. And so I could have gone to this other really good school and they didn't even know about the program. So to get the placement that I got, I thought, okay, that's pretty huge. Um, some of the programs that they were trying to entice me with at that other school that I wanted to go to, I met a girl a couple weeks ago who is a 3L. It's her last year at that school. And she's doing exactly the work that I want to do. She's like, I'm doing youth advocacy, I'm doing juvenile delinquency and criminal justice. And so she is getting ready to graduate. And she basically talked about her path the past 3 years. And I was like, oh, yeah, I wanted to do that class. And I wanted to do that. Those are all the things about that school that excited me. And she
Hmm.
said, yeah, no, last year they canceled that. Last year that disappeared. They changed the program, so you can't do that anymore. All of the things that I wanted to do the year
Wow.
that I would have started, she was like, I'm glad I started 3 years ago because I got to do all this stuff. But starting this year, they eliminated all of those programs. And so all the things I wanted to do don't even exist anymore. And I
That's
thought,
amazing.
yeah, I thought, whoa, that is huge. And then it turns out the professors, so there are your basic sort of core classes that everybody takes contracts, everybody takes there's like basic ones you take. And then based off of how you want to specialize, you take your specialized classes in like family law or like youth, whatever. And so we would have taken all the same core classes and we would have also taken, there's only 2 or 3 professors in each specialty that teaches those classes. Um, and she did not like her professors in her specialty classes, and I didn't get the chance to experience them, so it might just be like my favorite professors in some of my classes right now other people really don't like, so everybody has personal preferences. But
Right.
she took classes with like 6 or 7 professors and she didn't like any of that, and I thought, wow, i I don't, those are the professors I would have had class with. And some people just don't like anybody. Some people are just unreasonable and they find reasons to dislike anything. But when I talked to her, she didn't seem like that kind of person. And so I thought, wow, I really think I'm in the right place.
It sure sounds like it.
Yeah, I love all of my professors and they have been very supportive and very helpful. And yeah, so that taught me a lot. Um, and then even then, when I called my dad and I asked him what I should do for the summer. Most people, they get a job at an agency and they do paperwork, intern type work,
Right.
because it's your first summer. You don't really know very much. People don't want to hire you to do work because you haven't been in law school for very long. And so they give you basic stuff to do until after your second summer. Um, and so he said, or the guidance was, you need to work with a judge. And I laughed because I was like, that's not a thing. your first summer, you don't just go and work with a judge. Like, people don't want to hire you, let alone a judge somewhere. And so I talked to my advisor, and she said, well, here are some things you can try. You know, it's not going to be easy. And she also pointed me to the program. Um, and I only pursued that option because of the guidance. If not for that, I would have done what everybody else does, and I would have gotten a job at like Great Old Boston Legal Services, and I would have answered phone calls and maybe gone to court a couple times. But with that guidance and finding out about this program, I ended up with a position with a judge in the First Circuit doing work that the other interns there are going to be law school graduates. Like, they already have a degree, they've already passed the bar. I'm going to be there
Wow.
my first summer. Um, so and the judge is a Harvard graduate. So I thought for sure he was only going to want to look at interns from Harvard. I know I interviewed with other interns who came from Harvard, but he picked me. Um, and I don't think that that was an accident. I think that I'm great, and I think that I'm smart, but I definitely think that I had help. Um, and so all of those things together, I'm starting to take this a lot more seriously, to the point
Wow.
I want to ask for everything. My niece, her birthday is this summer. Before I bought a ticket, obviously I want to go to her birthday. I want to see her, and I want to see my sister and my brother-in-law and the rest of my family. And I called dad first and I said, should I buy a ticket? Like, I ask before I do anything now. Um, and I listen.